This video is sponsored by Gatsby Law that was set up by brothers Saf and Armory 4, two lawyers that will fight for justice on behalf of yourself. Get in touch today to win your case. In the suburbs in the heart of England, police discovered an intricate organised crime group that was importing billions of pounds worth of drugs into the country. The media will often let you believe that council estates in the middle of London or Birmingham and Manchester are where all this originates from. The kid on the street selling an ounce of drugs is potentially somebody that's involved in the greater picture, but this isn't often the case. It's often somebody who has a very legitimate job, somebody who you would never suspect, could be anybody's uncle, anybody's dad, situated in a very nice house out of the way, and that is how they operate, because the last thing you want is attention, and that is all the council estate gives you. It gives attention from the police, attention from the media, and when you live in the suburbs, nobody is looking. In this latest case, 18 members of an international drug group have been convicted after a National Crime Agency investigation in the United Kingdom's biggest ever detected drugs conspiracy. The offenders are thought to have smuggled billions of pounds worth of cocaine, heroin and cannabis into the UK, and they spread from the southeast of England all the way to Scotland, and eventually there was ties to the Netherlands. The police estimated they imported 50 tonnes of drugs with a weight of around 30 family-sized vehicles. 2 criminal trials were needed to convict everybody involved, and one lasted 23 months and was a record in England and Wales, and the other one lasted 9 months. And the judge who presided over the trial says the drug smuggling was on an industrial scale and unprecedented. This week at Manchester Crown Court, reporting restrictions were finally lifted after the second trial was completed, and news of the operation was now revealed. There was a total of 6 seizures of drugs with a total street value of £40 million that was taken from the organised crime group, and this was based in the northwest of England, with accomplices in the Netherlands. And between the indictment period of August 2015 and 2018, police discovered more people that were involved. NCA investigators proved at least 240 importations were done by one group alone, and they went to great lengths to confuse the authorities and avoid justice. The judge in the case, Paul Lawton, said if only half of the importations contained the same quantity of drugs as the 6 that were recovered, it would be £3 billion worth. So in some senses this was a bit of speculation, but this is what happens when they get into courts and drugs are spoke about. The organised crime group was led by 59-year-old Paul Green, and he has been jailed for 32 years. He set up a series of companies and operated in warehouses in England and the Netherlands to mask his offending and to also avoid detection. The organised crime group concealed its drugs in concealments of strong-smelling foods such as onions, garlic and ginger, and the crime group brought so many onions, between 40 tonnes and 50 tonnes a week, into the country. They often had so many onions they would have to send them back to the continent to use them in another load. The OCG operated to a high degree of criminal tradecraft to evade the authorities, the prosecution said. Green rented a hotel room near his home in Widnes in Cheshire so he could use the Wi-Fi without it being traced back to him. Offenders used encrypted mobile phones, faked documents, they changed their names by deed poll, and acquired live and defunct but previously legitimate businesses to disguise their drug importations. This allowed them to work with legitimate suppliers and transport firms, and wasn't as suspicious because they even had existing VAT numbers. As well as bringing his own drugs for subsequent sale, Green specialised in operating a smuggling route for other UK-based crime groups. The criminal charges against the OCG related to 5 separate smuggling plots. They accused Green of also faking a paper trail to smuggle £1.1 million worth of amphetamine-based oil in bottles of cream from Belgium. A border force dog sniffed out the drugs that was in a van on the 29th of March 2016, and undeterred, the organised crime group continued importing drugs. In another attempt, the offenders used a front company and it cloned from a legitimate business in Cornwall to try and smuggle 8 kilos of cocaine that was approximately worth £1 million into the UK. In another attempt to import drugs, they rented a warehouse in the Netherlands and they stored cocaine inside 4 cardboard boxes that was packed with ginger, and it was destined for deliveries to warehouses in Bolton, Wigan and Ormskirk. The OCG rented warehouses in Leeds, Preston, Sheffield and Warrington over the course of the offending to store drugs and to move them about easily. In September 2016, the plot was finally foiled when an innocent Dutch haulage driver employed to collect and deliver a consignment smelled a rat. He returned to the depot and called the police, and they found 8 1-kilo bricks of cocaine. Each had different markings to denote the various OCGs that they were destined for. A month later, Green's OCG was trying to smuggle 59 kilograms of amphetamine that was worth about £1.1 million for the Netherlands to the UK, but Dutch officers put them under surveillance and were listening to every phone call. Russell Leonard, 47, was a foot soldier for the OCG. He spoke fluent Dutch, and a man who could not be named for legal reasons had 57 kilos in the van and was responsible for keeping it safe on its route to the UK. Leonard from Merseyside was usually responsible for packing the group's drugs in the Netherlands, and his accomplice went out drinking all night and left the van unguarded in a suburb of Amsterdam. In a recorded conversation, Green told one of them, if the van's gone been grabbed by the police, there'll be fucking murders. When the duo returned the following morning from the drinking session, they got into the van and drove off, but immediately were stopped by Dutch police. Leonard was jailed for 24 years. In 2017, the OCG recruited Suhail Qureshi, Khalid Vazia and Ganzafar Mahmood. They wanted to develop a new route to transport the drugs into the UK, and they joined forces with a Dutch criminal group led by Barbara Rinchboit, 53 years old, and Johannes Vesters, 54 years old, and they were jailed for 18 years and 20 years respectively after being extradited from the Netherlands. In 2018, after NCA and Dutch police began working together, the vast scale of the OCG's offending became clear. This led to the seizure of 450 kilos of cocaine and heroin and 2 tons of cannabis in 3 seizures in ports in Killingholme and Immingham. Both of these was in Lincolnshire and one in the Netherlands. Green was also convicted of fraud by false representation, and himself and an accomplice called Leslie Quinn, 63 years old, stole a man's identity and raised 262 grand mortgage on a victim's 4-bedroomed house in Waverton near Chester to pay for a drugs debt. This was instructed by Green, and Quinn rented the property and changed his name by deed poll to the same as the landlord. Quinn then claimed he owned the home and obtained the fraudulent mortgage provided by a small finance company, and the OCG used the landlord's name to open several bank accounts, created a fake company called Blackpool Fruit and Veg, and rented a warehouse in Leeds. When Green was arrested by the police, they recovered almost 10 grand in cash in his home. Bank statements showed him and his wife spent more than 26 grand on watches and jewellery in 6 months. And they also discovered between 2016 and 2018, £1.5 million had passed through his own and his wife's bank accounts. And between 2013 and 2018, Green only submitted 2 tax returns for cleaning and a hairdressing business. The judge said this caused great harm, and you facilitated the distribution of drugs by organised crime groups and went to great lengths and spread across the country. The evidence disclosed during this investigation shows you was operating in London and also Scotland. But what you were actually doing was distributing addiction and misery, and in some cases death. All of that you knew, and you were happy to facilitate this and work with organised crime. Rob Jones from the NCA says, without criminals like this, there would be no young dealers on the streets working on county lines. There would be no turf wars, no murders, and no innocent members of the public killed in the crossfire. Paul Green and his accomplices enabled and helped deliver this kind of suffering and misery to communities across the country, and this was a crucial link in delivering drugs from source countries and operating with large organised crime groups. So this story really does ask a lot of questions of how you really see drugs getting into the country and what your perception of what organised crime groups are. I really look forward to hearing what viewers have to say on this story, and please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe and follow on social media, especially Telegram, for the latest updates and news.